Hi everyone, it's Agnes. Guess who's here with me? Hello, Josiah.
Hi, Agnes. It's so great to be here again with you. Thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah, I thought we had a good time the first time and we didn't get to kind of finish. So we thought, let's do a part two together. And
Yes.
today's subject.
Oh, the law and the
And the
promise.
promise. Yep.
Yes. Okay,
So
so you had given me a peek of that book earlier, Agnes. You like held it up and I was like, oh my God, look at that. Yes. All the annotations, the sticky notes,
it's
you
all
got the little
falling apart
cliff,
at
the
the
notes. Yep.
back.
Yes. That is a well-loved volume.
It is a
Yep.
well-loved volume.
Yes.
This is the Bible of my house. It's this.
Yes, yes. And rightfully
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So
So,
we said we'd talk about a few things in particular in this book. First,
yeah.
just the concept of the old man. So let's start with that because that's more
Mm,
of a general one. What do you think about that when Neville talks about the old man?
the concept of the old man. When you first brought that up to me and I thought about it, I thought about the story that he tells, and it's a biblical reference.
Yeah.
But he talks about Moses going up to this mountain and burying the remnants where no one will ever find basically the old man, like getting rid of it so completely that
Yeah.
there's really, really no chance for it to ever show its face ever again, that the old man, like
Yeah.
literally wiping it out of existence.
Yeah.
And for me personally, when I think about getting rid of the old man and my own process of getting rid of the old man, in terms of my journey, it's looked like a couple of different things. One has been breaking the pattern of thinking that represents the old man, because that's probably the most immediate manifestation of the old man state, is those patterns of thinking, like, oh, I find myself thinking like this all the time, and that's the old man. So let's go ahead and break that and adopt a new frame of thinking. And then number two, it's interesting because it was physical. I literally went through my keepsakes, like this box of stuff that's stuck with me as I've moved, to different places throughout my life. It's like there's this one little box that's also been coming along with me. And sometime towards the end of last year, when I was really in this place of the old man and letting go of the old man, I remembered, I was like, I have this little box of stuff that follows me everywhere. I don't remember the last time I actually looked at it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I got this baggage that my subconscious sees as important. What's there?
Yeah.
So I actually had to go down into my basement and pull out this little tub of stuff and go through it. And as I did so, I made it a very conscious practice of seeing the old man and then letting it go. And I shredded so much stuff from so many different phases of my life that simply don't fit me anymore. They don't describe me anymore. They don't serve me anymore. I don't have place for them anymore.
Yeah.
So for me, old man has kind of been both, kind of like, up here and physical, tangible changes. Yeah.
That's good. It's, because who you were then, there'll be parts of that might still be active, like creative things you like to do or hobbies or things like that. But I know we drag around a lot of this stuff, and you do notice that when you move, you go, I haven't looked at this since the last time I moved.
Right. So why, the question is begged to be asked, why is it still hanging around?
Why is it still here?
What's my attachment to it?
Yeah. I find, the thoughts like you talk about, the repetitive, habitual, negative thinking on certain subjects, work, money, relationships, and freedom, feeling trapped versus feeling free. For me, a lot of the old man, when I got this book, because I felt extremely trapped at that time, it was about letting go of the thinking that kept me really where I didn't want to be, which was in a job I didn't want to be in, and doing things I didn't want to do. And pretty much everything in my life at that point was stuff I didn't want to do. Everywhere I turned, there was stuff I didn't want to do. And it was like the whole process of reading the law and the promise, because we're going to talk about that in a bit more depth in a minute. When I read that, I remember I'd lay in bed And I felt this electricity going through my body as I read this book, because it was such a feeling of possibility that if it could happen for these people, because they were ordinary people, they weren't, you know, PhDs or people with, you know, they weren't focusing on any of that part of their lives. They were focusing on how good they were at imagining. That's what they were focusing on. It was like, I wanted this, I did this, I imagine it for X amount of time. And in this book, they do tell you often it was 3 weeks or 2 months or whatever. And you go, okay. And then they told you the result. And that formula was like, well, hang on. If I just follow and do what they did, I'm going to let go of the old man. So, yeah, this book was a huge eye-opener in possibilities of how to let go of the old man. That's what this book is about.
Very well said. Beautifully said.
Yeah. Have you got this book? Or have you got the complete reader one that's got them all in there?
Not the physical version, but I have it digitally. But I tell you what, looking at you holding it in your hand, I'm like, man, I've got to have this physical, you know, so I can annotate it and highlight and add post-it. You're inspiring me. Yes, it's just not the same on a screen.
It's not. You need a crusty copy. If you can get one in a secondhand store, even better.
One that's already been loved. The love is in the pages already. I'm going to buy yours.
It's so funny, isn't it? Because when I pulled it out, I went, gee, this looks a bit raggedy. And I remember how much you know, and when I didn't even have a highlighter, like you can see the pages are underlined just with a pen. So it went through levels of, I'd read it, because I've read this book, I think 100 times in the last, since the 90s. And it was like, you'd go over it and you'd go, did I really get that? Yes, I get it. But how do I apply it? What am I going through? How do I get that feeling of relief? How do I get this from this story? And the doctor and his wife, which we're going to talk about first, that story was so simple. And I was such a distruster of life at that time. I didn't trust life, didn't trust myself, didn't trust my ability to focus. And the way they allowed this whole situation to unfold, and they didn't jump on it and try and squeeze it and make it happen at each point in that story, was mind-blowing. Their ability to allow was profound.
I love your words there. The idea of, you know, not trying to squeeze it out, but rather holding that space and allowing it to develop. And there was a couple of key things that really stuck out to me about that story in particular. And one of them is that, well, I think it's remarkable to have two people, partnership in this instance, the doctor and his wife, united in the imagination. I think there's another level of power and also on some level accountability to like keep the vision. So like if one person starts talking another way, like, oh, hold on, like the building's already built, it's already right there. Like, what are you talking about, right? You can kind of like rein them back in. But a couple things that really stuck out to me. One of them was that they actually sat down and drew out exactly what the building looked like. You know, they had it in their imagination, but they drew it out so that they could align their imaginal picture of it together. And then they would walk through it basically every day. Probably similarly to how they would when it was actually a 3D fact. They went ahead and treated it as though it were a 3D fact and experienced it in their imagination first. But I love, in particular, what I want to point out about that is the extreme level of clarity that represents. It's not just, oh, I have a building. I mean, that's a great place to start, but like, okay, like build it in your imagination, build the floor plan, like see yourself in it, know what it looks like, experience it with a level of vividness, the vividness of your imagination before it ever shows up. And when you get that level of clarity, kind of a throwback to our last conversation, you get that level of clarity, that's when the other people, so-called people, you know, outside of us are become under our influence to bring to us the manifestation of whatever it is that we're holding that level of clarity of. There's like an electricity associated with it that powers the creation and brings it back to us.
Like the contractor saying when he showed up, he said, I don't know what I'm doing here. Normally people come to see me. And he was kind of like, you could almost feel that bit of uncomfortability when he said that, because he was like, how did I get here? I don't even know what I'm doing here.
He was under the influence.
Yeah, that was a lovely part of the story.
Yeah.
The other part I really liked, Josiah, was the where he talked about that the doctor and his wife were talking about that they saw the name of the contractor on a sign across the road. And they said here, one day while we were talking together of our building, so the guy is writing the story, not the wife, he says, my wife mentioned a contractor who had constructed several apartment houses in our neighborhood. We knew of him only by the name that appeared on the signs adjacent to the building under construction. But realizing that if we were living in the end, we would not be looking for a contractor, and we promptly forgot this angle. And I love that, because if you really are living in the end, you don't start to manage the steps in between.
Oh,
and I loved how they got that deeply. Hang on a minute. We've just drawn the plans. We're imagining it every night. Why am I talking to you about this contractor on the sign? That moment of absolute deep understanding that was a step backward.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes. We promptly dropped that angle. What a perfect way to say it. Yes.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And the level of steadfastness, he mentions that came up, and then they dismissed it and said, no, that's not living in the end. And then they firmly planted themselves in the end. And then, the contractor shows up the second time and says, hey, I've got the money for it, and you just have to put down this much. And they're like, no, it's already built. Yeah. And then he shows up the third time and he's like, hey, I tell you what, I'm going to finance it myself. The blueprints are going to be free, blah, blah, blah. Basically signed, sealed, and delivered here. Just need your allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
That's when the manifestation you've planted, that seed, has come to fullness and is ripe for the harvest. When it's like, here, I just need you to allow it to happen. Like, you don't have to, I love what you said, manage the steps in between. There's no managing of the steps in between. No. When you're doing that, that's like, you're in your orchard and you're looking at the apples and they're like tiny and hard and green. You're like blowing on them, like, ripen faster. Like, no, allow them to develop. And when they're ready, you reach up and they fall off the tree into your hand. As soon as you touch them, they just detach. And there it is. And then you take a bite and you savor the flavor that is a ripe apple that has come to fullness. Yeah. It really is the experience of creating the way that Neville Goddard teaches. It's about getting to that level of clarity. I'm going to eat this apple, and then allowing it, the process to develop, the gestation. He talks a lot about like how every seed that is planted takes a different amount of time to come to fullness. Yeah. Part of it is just waiting. Just patiently waiting. And holding the vision. Yeah. And I think that story describes that better than any other story I've ever read. They understood that things were starting to come towards them. The contractor showed up once. Then they said, thank you, we don't have money for the blueprints. Okay, so the guy goes off and they thought that's the last we're going to hear of him. He shows up again. I've made some alterations from some plans I had before. Okay, great, but we still don't have the money. Oh, it's going to cost you $30,000 only. Yeah, that's great. That's a good price, but we still don't have the money. So they didn't go, wow, this deal's getting so close, let's jump on it. Right. That's what's so profound about that story is they let the thing fully incubate and fully hatch. Yes. Yes. Yeah. How many people who simply don't know any better would get to that stage, because the doctor and his wife, they talk about how, when they first bought the property and had their house, they had this idea, like, eventually we're going to put an apartment building here. Yeah. And then they get to that point in their careers where they're like, wow, we have security for our business, but we really don't have the money to spend on this house. Yeah. How many people would just drop it right there never to be discussed again, and end their life with this unfulfilled dream.
Yeah.
Never embracing the possibility that there was potentially another option.
Yeah.
And that brings me to a quote from The Law and the Promise that I wanted to share with you on this, because I'm sure you have it highlighted in 15 colors in that well-loved physical paperback you have there. And the quote is, "Life is a romantic adventure. To live creatively, imagining novel solutions to even more complex problems is far nobler than to restrain or kill out desire.
Yeah.
All that is desired can be imagined into existence."
Yeah. I know. He's right. It's almost like you got to read that 3 or 4 times and just really absorb it's just an enormous thing shoved into a few little sentences.
Yes. I want to tattoo it right here. Just fall asleep staring at it every single night. Yes.
Oh, it's so good. Yes. What was that? Was that from In the Law and the Promise? That was
It was in the Law of the Promise. Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes. Yes.
So thinking about that story, what do you think, apart from their amazing ability to allow, what do you think were some of the real golden little nuggets for you when you read it?
Yes. So one, which I had mentioned a minute ago, was the fact that it's these two people docking together on a dream. I just think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in that. Two was, yes, an incredible demonstration of allowing. And I love that word more than anything, the allowing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was the, right at the very end, they had all of the apartments rented, but one.
Yes.
And that's like that cliffhanger moment, because that's like, like any good, suspense novel, like you get right to the end, there's like that cliffhanger, like what? And in that moment, they're like, they changed their picture slightly.
Yeah.
And rather, I don't know if you caught that. I'm sure you caught that. You've read it 100 times.
Yeah.
They changed their picture slightly. Instead of walking the tenants through and hearing the words, "We'll take it," which they had used to rent the rest of the apartments. And this one in particular, they imagined themselves invited in by the tenant after they had already moved in all their belongings. And they were led through the different rooms, I don't know if you're a landlord at all, but there's particularly when you yourself enjoy the space, or maybe have lived in the space before that you're now renting out to someone else. I could say from my experience, I've gotten some joy out of seeing how other people make that space their own.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of the feeling that they were tapping into when they were imagining being led through the space and hearing the tenant say, "Oh yeah, we put the couch there and we chose this one as the master, and the child's gonna live over here," whatever. I'm kind of embellishing a little bit, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
It's like using that as an imaginal picture of like, I'm being led through this place and the tenant's telling me how happy they are, and I'm getting joy from seeing how they've made that property, that apartment their own.
Yes.
And I loved the couple components I loved about that was, one, the steadfastness in the vision. Like, they're not getting dissuaded on the final lap of the race. It's like, oh, what? We're gonna rent 3 of the 4? No, it's all or nothing. This is a fullness. We're harvesting something that is ripe.
Yeah.
And then having the clarity on that, and then having the level of focus to say, okay, let's shift this picture. Let's choose one in which, again, we're living in the end again, already completed. We're being led through this apartment. And then, just like that, last apartment's rented, all the pieces fall into place. And then that final cherry on top is when that woman that had disavowed them socially on some level, as he refers to in his story, comes back through and says, "Oh, I want to see your apartment building."
Yeah.
And gets all the way through it and says, "Doctor, it's beautiful."
Yeah.
Which is just really that slamming the book closed. We are complete.
Yeah. Yeah,
just
that's
like
true.
that.
It makes you laugh, because in this day and age, you'd think, who cares what she thinks? But in that day and age,
yes, it was a different time. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
Very evident there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good bit of the story. I like how they picked that moment in time, like you're talking about the tenant, rather than hearing the tenant say, I'll take it. They went past that moment in time, not in the present. They're here in the pretty near past, as in just here. They're envisaging the pretty near future with the tenant taking it. But what they did was they went over here.
Yes.
They were standing here, but then they imagined that moment in time.
Yes.
Further, which seemed to be easier for them. And it made it more, I don't know, kind of set it in stone more easily for them, and then it manifested. So you can do that. You can do a present day thing where you imagine the tenant, or you can do a moment past. And neither one of them's wrong. They just work differently for different people. So, you know, there's different ways around the circle with how you interpret imagining. And you've got to test it out on your own self to see what works best for you.
Yes. And by what works best, I would offer that it's which feeling is more joyful.
Yes.
Right? You said that keyword earlier. You said the feeling of relief. How do I get to the feeling of relief? Which of those pictures is that a component of it? And that might be, you know, it might be different from one person versus the other, even if the situations are mostly the same. But I think that, you know, we have the opportunity to be playful with our imaginary creations. And when we're manifesting, it's like, okay, I'm not just being all serious, like, oh, I need to have this apartment building and it needs to be rented and blah, 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 blah. I could be like, oh, what scene am I playfully going to create that feels best to me, feels most joyful to me? You know, kind of like I alluded to about kind of the joy of seeing how someone took a space and made it their own, and like just kind of getting some pleasure out of that. Like maybe that's what gets me excited to the point where I can get that feeling of relief. But maybe for someone else, they're like, I just want them to deliver me a rent check under my door in the morning. And maybe that's their picture. Like, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want we're not going to be friends. I just want that envelope under my door. And maybe that's your magical pictures. Opening up the envelope and being like, wow, here's however many dollars that I didn't have to do anything for, really. Yeah. Right? Like whatever the picture is that brings you the most joy, that feels the best. Yeah. That gets you to that feeling of relief. Like, yes, it's here. It's full term. I've harvested.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I love that. That's the good thing about this book, is you hear how different people used imagination creates reality, how they used living in the end. And in this story, so much of the focus is on the not jumping before it's fully ripe. That was the benefit of that story. They lived in the end. They adjusted their living in the end scene in the end when 95% of it had hatched, but that last little bit hadn't. So they adjusted it. So you get to see so many different layers to what they did. They didn't ring the contractor on the sign. They joined together, as you said, to imagine together. They made sure they drew the plan so they were on the same page. So all these things moved them a little bit more towards this incredible end result. So yeah, it's such, for those, I don't know, Josiah, have you actually done a YouTube about the doctor and his wife?
I think I do have, I don't have the full book up yet, but I think I do have that portion of the book up on my YouTube. Yes.
Great. So what we'll do is we'll put the links to those down below too, so that people can, who haven't heard the full story of the doctor and his wife, and they've heard us talk about it now, they can go and explore the full story, because it is such a fabulous story. So second story.
Okay.
In my secret book.
Secret book of treasures. Yes.
Oh, where is it? Oh, here we go. So, just so people know, that first story comes from the chapter on Dwell Therein. And this next story that we're referring to is from the chapter Moods. And like you said, the woman who had absolutely nothing and had really nowhere to turn, and she had no job, no family to fall back on. And
really no support at all. She felt very alone. Yeah.
Do you want to share a bit about the story? Like,
I'll kind of recap it, particularly for those of you that maybe haven't heard the story, or maybe not even familiar with the Law and the Promise at this point. Yeah. So in this story in particular, I'm just going to share from memory. I reread it this morning, so pretty fresh. This woman, she was just at a place in her life where she just felt really alone. No job, no money, just kind of in this place where she's just really felt like destitute. Like that's quite possibly the best word for it. And she's feeling like the pressure of like this weight of like, man, I have nothing. I don't really have any possibility. I don't really have any opportunity. And I don't even really have any like backup plans in the form of support from friends or family or whatever. I feel alone.
Yeah.
And then she said, you know, embracing what you taught, Neville, embracing what you taught about, you know, changing the feeling and using a feeling to change circumstances.
Yeah.
She said, I was sitting in my tub, you know, taking a bath, and I chose to change my feeling in that moment, to consciously override kind of this weight that she was feeling and to change it. And in her mind, she called into her consciousness this feeling. She cultivated this feeling of something amazing is happening to me right now. Something incredible, something awesome, a miracle is happening to me right now.
Yeah.
And she was able to put herself in this state of anticipation. Like,
Josiah, can you hold on one sec?
Yeah, of course.
Sec. Go.
Okay. Yes. So she gets to the point where she starts to create this feeling of something amazing is happening to me right now. Yep. And she cultivates that feeling and she begins to sit in it. And not just that one time in the bath. She adopts this all the time. She's constantly telling herself, something amazing is happening to me now. And she can feel it in her being. She tunes into that state.
Yes.
And then bridge of incidents. I almost wish I could quote this part because it's so amazing how it all comes into place. But basically through a bridge of incidents, an old friend that she hadn't been in contact with for a really long time somehow met someone else, and she became the subject of their conversation. Surprise, surprise. Under her influence, right? That's what that is. Suddenly they start talking about, you know, this woman, and she had no idea that this had occurred, but this old friend from a long, long time ago that she had not been in contact with at all had grown massively wealthy in that gap. Tremendous amount of wealth. And for some reason, under her influence of her imaginal picture, that these two people, unbeknownst to her, consciously anyways, begin talking to each other about her.
Yep.
And out of that conversation, this old friend is inspired. I want to bless this woman with some of my wealth. I just feel inspired to give generously to this woman.
Yeah.
So he shows up on her doorstep and hands her a check for what? $25,000?
$2,500, the first one.
$2,500.
Yeah,
okay, first one.
Probably, but you know what, Josiah? In today's terms, that would have been like $25,000.
Would have been about $25,000. Yes. About $25,000 in 2019 dollars.
Yeah.
And just out of the blue.
Yes.
And she's, you know, her feeling is confirmed at that point. She's like, oh my God, something amazing has happened to me right now. This is like evidence that it's coming back. And, you know, so she was extremely grateful for that first gift. And then they just keep coming. And she starts getting checks dropped off to her in the mail from this man's attorney's office every month for the next couple of years.
Yep.
And then at some point she gets a letter in the mail informing her that an arrangement has been made, which will continue this income arrangement for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
Income security for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
All from adopting and holding this feeling of something amazing is happening to me now.
Yeah.
Now, I would say it's one thing to say it like, oh, something amazing is happening to me now. But Agnes, if you really tune into that space of something amazing is happening to me now, like that is a very specific feeling. I have to ask you, like, have you used that feeling in particular in your life? Yeah.
Especially for traveling between three places.
Yes, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
But you know what it was about that story? She said there were so many things that she needed in such quick order. She said she used to try and imagine all the things she needed, and she used to get like really anxious because there was so many things.
So many things, yeah.
And she was sitting in Neville's lecture, and he was describing to an artist And I'd forgotten this part of the story till I reread it this morning, where she heard Neville telling this artist about capturing the feeling of it. Isn't it wonderful what's happening to me now? Or isn't it amazing what's happening to me now? That way it was like a blanket cover over, and it encompassed all of these things. So she went home and did the same thing because she had the same problem.
Yes.
So I think that's such an important thing when
Absolutely.
you do want so many things and you don't know where to start with your imagining. You just bypass all those things. You capture the feeling that covers every area, and it filters down, trickles down. And then like this, it just completely made every angle, every corner, every nook and cranny of lack disappear in quite a short amount of time, really.
Yes.
She would have got, as soon as she got that first check, she would have felt such incredible relief. That next level of relief then brought in checks every month. And then that amazing feeling then brought in checks for the rest of her life. So once you're on the first level, the cogs start to get oiled and they start to turn more quickly. She did the first part was the hardest part.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad you really, really brought that out, that part in particular out. It's so important. And like you, I get questions a lot of the time through email or Facebook or whatever, people saying, I have, this that I'm imagining about this, and this that I'm imagining about this, and this that I'm imagining about this, and it's like, I'm almost overwhelmed. I have too much imagining to do. Like how do I do all of these things that I'm creating? And I feel like for those of you listening right now, like that's probably a lot of you as well. You're like, hey, I'm not just imagining about this. I'm imagining about everything. And rightfully so. Literally live your best life using your imagination. And Anya, you made such a beautiful point there. There is a overarching, almost like a sovereign, I'll use that word, sovereign feeling.
Yes.
That is above and encompasses all of the feelings below it. And that is the feeling of living your best life. Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
Isn't it wonderful? If you had miracles happening in every single, aspect, every single house of your life, right? The houses of life. If you had miracles happening in every single one, how would you feel all at once? You'd feel altogether wonderful. Celebrating, that I could feel it in my body right now, but like you have to tune into that to where you feel it and then hold it. And then as you're moving through your reality and you're watching things ripen, you're just holding that feeling. You're not trying to squeeze the fruit before it's ready. Like, we're just going to bring these stories together and just make it really clear. This is what you do. Yes.
That's so true. Yeah. I mean, I think both of those people really, she allowed too. She didn't have any choice because she didn't have anything in her. There was no security behind her. The doctor and his wife at least had each other, and they had some money in the bank, and they were paying off their mortgage. Whereas she everything was she was in the hallway. All the doors were shut.
Yep.
So she had to muster up a lot more feeling from a very low place. That would have taken, and 2 months really isn't that long, really, when you think about it. Her whole life changed in 2 months.
In 2 months. I'm really present to a story that I want to share right now. And I unfortunately, I don't remember where this came from.
Yeah.
Definitely, studied enough stuff. It could have come from anywhere, honestly. But it just feels so pertinent to this moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's going to be pertinent for those that are listening in this moment as well. There's the story of this woman who was in a very, very desperate situation. It was a Sunday afternoon. And if she didn't have about $9,000 by the next morning, literally less than 24 hours away, Monday morning, she was going to be evicted from her home, car repossessed, homeless, out on the street, just ruin, absolute ruin.
Yeah.
And so she's sitting, Sunday afternoon, she's like, man, I'm just at this point and I don't know what to do. So you know what she did? She took a nap.
Yeah.
She took a nap. Okay. So all of that pressure on her, and she's able to take a nap. What does that tell you about her state? Even before I tell you the rest of the story, what does that tell you? It tells you that she got to a place of peace about it. She got to a place of, you know what? I'm going to allow. She got to that place of, I am trusting that everything is going to work out for me. Something amazing is happening to me now.
Yeah.
This is, regardless of the appearances on the 3D physical plane, I know that my manifestation is at hand.
Yep.
And then in that state, she takes a nap. She wakes up to a phone call from a friend, old friend, someone she hadn't talked to in a number of years. And her friend's like, hey, I don't know if you ever changed your address when you moved, but they used to be roommates, right? She's like, but I keep getting letters for you. And there's this one that came in the mail that, like, it looks kind of important. Like, can I just come over and drop it off to you? And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? The friend shows up, and of course, it's a check for more than $9,000, right? All the money that she needed from a bank account that she had forgotten to close and forgotten all about. And the bank account had gone dormant, had gone, into whatever they do on the bank side. And then eventually they cut a check for her and said, hey, clearly you don't want anything to do with this. Like, we'll just send you back the money. And they sent it to her old address. And so her friend, well, the bank, obviously under her influence, timing wise, her friend under the influence, a friend could have looked at the envelope and been like, I haven't talked to her in forever. I'm not going to bother with it, right?
Yeah.
Her friend was under the influence too of her picture and said, no, something inside of me is telling me I need to call this woman and let her know, hey, I got this stack of mail for you. And this letter just came. It kind of looks important. Like, can I just come drop it off, right? So she takes a nap and manifests the money that she needed to save her house, save her car, get back into a position of security, put food on her plate, all the rest. So I share that because, again, this word keeps coming back, the allowing.
Yeah.
It's about, how do I remove my attention from what appears to be so? And focus on what I know in my heart of hearts to be so.
Yes. Correct. And allowing sounds easy. And it is, but it's easy when you don't have to do it and you haven't got your nose pressed against the window.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And in the situation where you're like, oh, you're feeling the pressure. How do I allow? Know that is fantastic practice. You're basically in training school for allowing.
Yeah, you're in training school. Yeah. And you
embrace it.
Get the best allowing when you've got a really tight spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, Neville uses, is it Neville? No, I think it's Florence Scovel Shinn.
Yeah.
She a lot of times she uses the term making a demonstration.
Yes.
Right? What better opportunity to make a demonstration of the creative power of imagination than when your nose is pressed up against the glass, right? And you're like, I don't really have anywhere to move, right?
Yeah.
Let's make a demonstration.
Let's make a demonstration. I'm glad you read her. She was my very, very first book, Law of Attraction. Your word is your wand.
Yes.
Before even Neville. So she's very dear to me too. I love her. She's got great affirmations. They're really funny kind of. Yeah. My favorite one of hers, the unexpected happens, my seemingly impossible good now comes to pass.
Yes. Yes.
It took me like 2 weeks to learn that.
Yeah. There's a magic in the way that woman strings the words together and the creative power of them. It's powerful. Yeah, Florence Scovel Shinn. Yeah, you
have to do a Florence Scovel Shinn.
Yes, I would love to. I have one of her books on my channel now.
Yes.
And the one with the affirmations, I'm in the process of narrating.
Yes.
And I'm doing all of the affirmations twice.
Lovely.
So that I read it so people can be like, okay, this is what it's going to be. And then I read it slower so you can follow along and speak them into existence for yourself along with them. So it's taking longer because of that, but that will be coming out on the channel soon.
Excellent. I mean, she's such a, I always think Neville, Joseph Murphy, Florence Scovel Shinn, they were such a little cluster of just, you can't even put it into words.
Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine gave me this name for her, Florence Scovel Shinn. She calls her Flossie.
Flossie.
It's like a pet name. Oh, Flossie says, whatever. And it just cracks me up every time. So I started calling her Flossie.
Flossie.
Flossie. Yeah, isn't that great?
We'll do a show with you, me, and Flossie.
Yeah, see, that's the title of the video right there. It just rolls right off the tongue. You, me, and Flossie. Yep.
You, me, and Flossie. There you go. So, have you got anything else you want to add, like from what we've nutted out today?
Yeah, I think I think really, I just want to encourage, there's every time I make any type of post, and I know it's true for you as well, because I've seen your videos, I've seen the comments in your videos. There's a whole spectrum of people that watch these videos that are in all different stages of growth, of manifestation of a particular dream, of parts of their consciousness waking up. Like, the whole spectrum is represented in the people that listen to these things. So I just want to take the opportunity to, wherever you are, whatever you are present to, one, know that you're not alone. There are other people out there that are in very similar positions. And honestly, at some point, I think all of us go through, most likely, on some level, what you're going through. So one, please don't feel alone. Know that this is a co-created experience on multiple levels. You're not alone, whatever you're facing. And then two, ease and grace. Like, give yourself the blessing of ease and grace. And really what I want to say about that is, understand that it is a process, and love yourself for even being at the level of consciousness where you're aware that you have creative power of your imagination.
Yes.
Take that moment to look back and say, I remember when I didn't even know I had the ability to choose my state. I didn't know that I could imagine and create things into my reality. Like, take a moment to reflect on that and feel that love and appreciation for yourself of wherever you are in the journey. And then, the key tidbits out of this conversation, Agnes, the clarity, like, hold that vision with clarity, refuse to squeeze until the fruit is ripe. I'm just going to use that. Don't juice the fruit until the fruit is juicy. I can't say it better than that. So just hang in there, keep that vision, know that you're not alone, love yourself through the process, appreciate yourself for learning how to do this. You're waking up your conscious creative power, and that is beautiful. Tune into the beauty of it. And remember, something amazing is happening to me right now.
That was a good way to finish, Josiah. Lovely.
Awesome.
Lovely. Honestly, to talk to somebody who is got an obsession with Florence and Neville and Joseph as much as I do, to me, that's a thrill.
Yes, I'm thrilled as well. I love talking to you, Agnes. I really appreciate it. Yes, thank you.
It's good. It's really good, because you can do a lot on your own. But there's something about bouncing stuff off and nutting out and going down different rabbit holes with each other on these things that we've both read, So I hope that you find a really worn out, crusty copy of The Law and the Promise.
Well loved. I love you use the word crusty. I'm like, no, well loved. She's like crusty. Okay. Maybe they're the same.
You know what? It is crusty because it's actually got, sometimes I'd be reading and I just love this book so much. I'd be there with like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and there's like rings inside my book from where I was trying to hold the pages open while I was.
Can't miss this thought. Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta reread that.
No, it's even more value when it's poured over in such a beautiful way. Yes.
It is. And I love that when I first read Neville, there were no digital copies. I love digital too, but there's something about the smell and the feel of this book, because it reminds me of where I was at that time. It's like it's got all the angst, all the suffering, all the learning, all the letting go. That book's got all of that between each and every page.
Oh, how beautiful. The whole journey right there.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It
beautiful.
Is.
Yes.
It is.
Truly precious. Heirloom, really.
It is an heirloom. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Family photos and this book.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Josiah, thank you for spending time with me, because I know you're going away on a very special trip tomorrow. So thank you.
It's my honor. Thank you for having me on.
And we will, you, me, and Flossie.
Yeah, you, me, and Flossie next time for sure. Absolutely. It's a date. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, we're going to say goodbye to you. Thanks for joining us and our bit of weirdness today. And I hope you enjoyed it. We'll put down below whatever Josiah and I talked about. We'll scratch up all our bits and pieces and put it underneath for you. And we will see you in the next YouTube.